Well, we know as a young player coming through, you're sort of taking it step by step, aren't you? And you're hoping that you can come through and win a few matches. And that 84 that we saw there, where I had the match point and lost on that fantastic day, I was sort of an underdog, so I felt like I didn't have the pressure was sort of off me. And after I lost that match, I can honestly say, and it sounds like something out of a movie or whatever, when you used to, people used to wait, see a movie and somebody woke up in the middle of the night going, oh, sweating, and that's a movie, right? Bullshit. That happens. That happened regularly with me throughout that 6 months. I used to wake up and go, fuck, my career's over. I had one chance and I blew it. Pardon my language, but that's the way I felt when you wake up in the middle of the night and thinking, oh, I had it and I blew it. Well, not long after that, of course, I got injured. I had a bad back, which required some surgery. At about the same time that I was told, well, it's going to be 9 months, 12 months. We're not sure exactly how you're going to recover from this. We should be okay. My girlfriend got pregnant. So there I was at a 20-year-old with a career on the line with a young son. Well, I didn't know it was a son at the time, but it turned out to be a son.
And a substantial injury.
And a substantial injury, not knowing really. I mean, I'd made a little bit of money from that match really, but that was about it. So it was a time really, I suppose, that I had to pull my finger out and really get serious about getting fit. So I did. I really started becoming quite obsessed about trying to be as good as I could possibly be, which meant follow a proper fitness regime through a very close friend, Anne Quinn. I was lucky enough to find her as one of the best fitness, speed and agility trainers that the world knew. She's a Melbourne girl, of course, and so I started working with her, and at that stage I accidentally discovered sports psychology, and I was, as luck would have it, or does it, I was sitting on the plane going from Melbourne to Sydney, and I was sitting next to a sports psychologist who wanted to start up a chat and talk about how's your mental state, all that sort of stuff, and I didn't really want to talk about that as a 19, 20-year-old, young father, all that sort of stuff, and we got talking, and I did. He said, "Why don't you just try one meditation session? Why don't you come and do one meditation session with me?" And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll why not?" So I was open to trying to improve, and that was the main thing for me. Is okay, I think this might be able to help. And I did a session. I thought, oh, this is fantastic. So that was when I accidentally sort of fell into that. The sports psychologist, the meditation, the stoicism, if you want to call it, that part of my life, which this time I was a pretty young, angry young man who wasn't things weren't going his way necessarily, with a young baby and a girlfriend that I was trying to travel around the world with at the age of 21. It's not exactly the easiest thing to do. But as things started coming back and I started working my fitness and trying to work within the team. I won't go into too much details, but I had a female trainer and I had a girlfriend who was, and your girlfriend, there was some conflicts there. So I'm trying to juggle those with a career, but I was getting back on track, and then I had an appendicitis, just as I thought I was back on track, and so that was 1986, and I had one of the first keyhole surgeries. In actual fact, one of the very early keyhole surgery, but they didn't go in and cut the muscle for an appendix, and within sort of about 3 weeks, I was just about able to play. And luckily I got into Wimbledon and I got through to the quarterfinals, absolutely exhausted, but managed to get myself through the quarterfinals. And at that stage I realised, if I can get myself really fit, I can win this thing. And that was when I moved into overdrive and really got super fit and started working. So throughout my career, I've seen, and life for that matter, time and time again, and it was injuries that were very obvious thing for me. But at the time, for a sports person, they are the worst things that can possibly happen. I mean, that's it. That is the worst thing that can possibly happen. But every one of those, and looking back at it and reflecting, and even now, looking back and reflecting on some sports injuries or setbacks, every one of them has led me to something better. At the time, it's very hard to realise that, to accept that, or to acknowledge that. But there's no doubt that every one of those setbacks had led me to a better situation. And being injured was one of the things I needed to get super fit, and that I did.
I think it's a great overview, and I'm going to tag this back to Stoicism all the way through in the different contexts that Pat and I have discussed it more personally. But in the wider construct of Tim's discussion and John's overview this morning, you can hear the same themes coming out. For example, constant improvement, constant review, constant reflection. And an injury of the natures that Pat had to endure, the physicality is one thing, but the drive from within is another. So in the four pillars of Stoicism, I'm going to go down the list and ask Pat some simple questions for him to address for us all. So on the theme of wisdom, Pat, in building your career and seeing both of these moments that we've just experienced and watched today, victory and defeat, what words of wisdom would you share with us today? The big lessons, victory and defeat, and how do you view them, and what would you take away from that?
Well, I think we sort of covered that a little bit there now. Victory it's an interesting thing. I guess Aurelius talked about how fleeting victory is, and not to get ahead of yourself with the applause or something along those lines. And that is so much so interesting how it can be ripped down in an instant. And I think I found that at being a young player, junior Wimbledon champion, the next big thing from Australia, the expectation on myself, the pressure I put on myself, then getting the applause, being the youngest player ever to play in a Davis Cup final, a win for their nation as a 18-year-old in Australia, and then to be ripped down straight away, and having had a gold medal in bad temper. I used to get a lot of hard time from the media, as you know. Yep. As you know, any Australians will know me as kind of this angry young guy. I think people still think I'm that angry guy. That was back then. It was certainly portrayed back then, though. I felt I was pretty intense on the court, but it wasn't necessarily off the court, though. I did have my moments, of course. If you ask any of my girlfriends or ex-partners. It is moving through and learning your lessons and having that wisdom to push on and push through.
Before I go to Justice, I want you said this to me once, I found this very fascinating, that Pat's winning of Wimbledon and going into the crowd and up to see his coach, that was a very iconic moment, never been done before, and it's been replicated ever since. But you said something very interesting, which most people wouldn't know, that when you reached out to your coach, Ian Barclay, you said something to him. You just won Wimbledon. Mm-hmm. It was an iconic moment in your life, and you said something to him. I'm wondering if you'd share it with everyone else and take the conversation from there.
Yeah. Well, Wimbledon title was the one that we'd always hoped to win, and he actually almost moulded me to win that Wimbledon title. As a young player in Melbourne, we grew up playing on basic clay courts. I was a clay court player, and if you know anything about tennis, clay and grass are the exact opposite. Though over the time, he sort of moulded me into this type of grass court player to win Wimbledon. not exactly, but he wanted me to develop in that way. So here I was at Wimbledon, dream come true. Had the team around me, had a fantastic team, created the first real team that we see so often in individual sports now, particularly tennis, where you have a physio, your trainer, your sports psychologist, your racket stringer, your manager, your partner, your whatever else they have going. They have 10 people. I had a sports psychologist, I had a trainer, I had a physio who travelled with me part-time, and people thought I was crazy. Actually, in actual fact, Wimbledon didn't give me the tickets in that box there that I climbed up to. They didn't give me the tickets because they said, no, we don't give tickets to these people. It's only your family members. I said, well, these are important people for me. What do you mean? They're my trainer, it's my sports psychologist. You've got to let them in. No, you can't have those. They literally said, you cannot have those people. I was like, well, I've got them. What are we going to do? Anyway, my dad being a lawyer, negotiated his way through that and got everybody into the box, so you want to. The thing for me, and we talk about gratitude there, but for me to climb up through the box was my way of saying thank you to my team. They were very important to me, especially being a young father. I needed that support. They were fantastic to me. My father was up there. My sister was also fantastically supportive. My partner was up there. My uncle. The whole works. But, so the climb was up there, it was for everybody, but no more so than, of course, my coach, who was there with me since I was 12, Ian Barclay. Look, we celebrated, but the climb, which I eventually made, I think it was more interesting than the match itself, because I got stuck halfway and had to almost go back and fall over and trip, and had to actually, I got halfway through. Back in those days, they had this big standing room, this empty pit where people at 12:30, the bell used to ring at Wimbledon and people used to run through the Wimbledon club to get to this front row area where there's a standing area. You can't have it these days because of fire hazards and all that sort of stuff, so they've got chairs everywhere, but it was weird. It was about 5 rows back from the chairs you could stand. It was like it was almost in the middle. So I climbed up through a few stairs and I went, oh shit, now I've got to this standing room area. I don't know how to get up. So I'm trying to get up into this commentating box, and no word of a lie, I'm thinking, how am I, oh my God, how am I supposed to get up there? And I hear this voice, stand on my shoulder, my son. I look down, there's a frickin' priest. I am not joking you. There's a priest there, and he says, stand on my shoulder, my son. And I go, yes, I will. And I stand on his shoulder and get up into the commentating box and ended up climbing through a few stands and chairs and getting up there. Later I found out it was just a guy who was dressed up as a priest. As you would in a stinking hot day in the middle of summer. He's a bit of a strange character. He's got some photos of me, he keeps contacting me. Do you want to see the photos? I'm like, oh, next year. Really strange character. But the celebration was done, and then, of course, the ceremony goes on very quickly, and before you know it, and I'm back in the locker room, and he said the very first thing I said after, you're getting pats on the back from the locker room attendant and whoever else was in there, and Fred Perry himself was in there. I said to Barkers, I said, let's go and win the US Open now. Come on, yeah. US Open. Yeah. That's what we want. Yeah. And he just looked at me, and he said, what? Yeah. You've just won Wimbledon, mate. Why don't you just chill out and enjoy this? Yeah. I was like, let's go and win Wimbledon. Let's go and win the US Open. Yeah. That was straight away, I couldn't enjoy the moment.
Yeah. And I think that's the point, and the relevance that the Stoics talk about of being in the moment, trying to process life in that moment, trying to take in that moment so you build. And you're already onto the next Everest, if you will. You're already moving there.
And it's not an uncommon thing, I think.
For that type of personality.
I thought I was very strange. But I kept hearing things very clear. One is Stephen Redgrave, the rower, who's won 5 Olympic, and he said he couldn't stop and enjoy the gold medals. He had to keep pushing himself. And I thought, oh, there's somebody else who's an idiot. No, I'm not the only idiot. Yeah. And I kept hearing somebody else, and then somebody else. I'm like, wow. This is actually really common for, athletes, I'm sure it's other people as well, businessmen, I'm sure there's businessmen. Right, we've done it, we've made a great success with this business or whatever. Let's do something else now, instead of slowing down. And in fact, it was so important for me for that lesson that I ended up getting a rose on my arm, getting a rose tattooed on my arm, to stop and smell the roses. Just a reminder, a daily reminder for me to slow down and actually enjoy the moment and smell the roses.
I think a very powerful piece. Next, talking about justice. It's tough in the tennis world because it's such a highly competitive situation, and it's dog eat dog in many respects. But the questions I have here for you are, in all your dealings over the world, and did you assess any sort of sense of justice around win-win? That's a difficult one, but you can't always have that sense when you're competing at that level. And what was the journey like? And the way I would then shift it a little bit around justice is those moments where you weren't necessarily competing against someone else. You're in the inner citadel. You're what we would say as an athlete, in the zone.
In the zone. Mm. Yeah, the zone. It's that holy grail sport. Whether you're a golfer or a tennis player or whatever it happens to be, and the coaches talk about it. I can honestly say, for an extended period, I think most top athletes go into that zone for certain periods. For me, and I talked to Novak Djokovic, interviewed him recently to ask him about this. But for me personally, I did it once for an extended period of time, and it was followed. It was preceded by letting go. I would say letting go, almost giving up on the goal. So I was to put it in context. It was 1987. It was the year. It was the last tournament for the year-end championships. So you had to Masters with ATP World Tour Finals. We have at the O2, which is no longer, it's moved on now. But that's the biggest thing of the year at the end of the year. So it's the champions of champions. It was myself. It's only top 8. I was number 9 ranked. This guy was number 8 ranked. We both went to South Africa, which was not a good move back in those days, and not a great publicity move back in those days either. But we both went there. One of us had to win the title, or whoever did better at that tournament was going to go in. That was the last tournament of the year. I ended up playing him in the final. So he didn't lose early, I didn't lose early. We played each other in the final. I win the first set. There's best of 5 sets in those days. I win the first set. I'm trying so hard to win this thing, to do this thing. Trying so hard. I end up playing terribly. And he wins the next 2 sets. So I'm in big trouble. And I just sort of let go. I don't know exactly what happened. Maybe the sports psychologist out here can give me a better example or explanation of what went on. But the next thing I remember is, honestly, the next thing I remember, I snapped out of it, and the score, I'd won 6-love, 5-love. I'd won 11 games straight. And I don't remember anything about it. He won a game. He won the next game, the crowd were, whoa! And I was like, I snapped out of it. I was like, shit, what happened? I don't remember anything about it. So something, that was the zone. So that was the one time. I talked to Novak Djokovic recently about it, and he said, yeah, he's been in it a lot more times. And how much, say, mindfulness, meditation, in a dialogue that he has with himself. He says he is in it regularly, but not for extended periods of time. And certainly the couple of matches I've seen him, he's Australian Open a couple of times that I've commentated on. It was absolutely ridiculous how he was completely in the zone and just could not make a mistake until Federer or somebody shook him out of it. And Nadal last time, and Federer the time before, 2 sets to love, just didn't make a mistake. And that's just some of the times he's been in it. So it's interesting to see how he got in there. And that's a lot of it is from self-reflection or meditation, that sort of thing.
One of the great things in John's book is about judgment. And I think Tim referenced as well, as Stoics, you'll place your judgments differently. It must be really hard as being one of the best in the world, and clearly at the world stratospheric level of excellence, to decipher, being that good, the controllables. Bad line call, bad weather, sunlight in my eyes, the other guys. How do you, that controllable, it's Marcus really, book 2, verse 1. I'm going to prepare myself to go into the day. This is the controllable, this is not, and discerning that and how I will react. As an athlete, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, well, I learnt those things. I've got to say, and that sports psychologist helped a lot. Proceeding up to, say, the Wimbledon final, where there was a lot of unknowns going on. Certainly, I didn't know how the other player was going to play, for one. What we did was daily relaxation techniques, followed by my sports psychologist talking me through various aspects, whether it could have been working on a few things that we pointed out, and none of them were goal orientated. I think that was important to say. None of them were the end result. It was all about trying to be better, right? You know, you're moving well, your forehand is going great, these sort of things. Today will be an improvement. Tomorrow will be an improvement. This match, you'll move better, you'll feel smooth, you'll grow, all these various things. So we did a lot of that. The night before, actually, I think without his prompting, I sat down. The household was quite tense, to say the least, with my coach and my sports psychologist sleeping in the rooms. My girlfriend, who was not very happy about cooking food for four guys, while having a baby. Everybody was trying to pretend they were doing something and cleaning up the house and all that sort of stuff. So I teased them about that now. I said, remember you cleaned my house? Yeah, only once. Before the Wimbledon final, I'll never get it again. Say Barker's my coach. But I sat down there and I watched Charles Bronson, Murphy's Law, him blowing away the bad guys. You know, it's a typical good guy, bad guy, revenge type of movie. I wasn't really paying that much attention, but what I did do is I visualised, as we did, but we visualised everything that could happen in that match, which was bad line calls, being down break points, being really nervous, having being a breakdown, having match point down, good things and bad things, crowd getting involved, getting tired, whatever it happened to be. So I was trying to imagine absolutely anything that could happen. So when I went into that day, there was a sense that a deja vu. Yeah. I'd been there. I was very, very calm, walking out of the noise, the difference between a semi-final or any other match that I'd played on centre court, and by that stage I'd played quite a few. But it wasn't my first Wimbledon final, but when you come out of a semi-final, people are quite excited. They're still coming in from their break or whatever. But at a Wimbledon final, when you come out of the dressing room, everybody's in their seats. And the roar was like nothing I'd ever heard before. It was just, whoa. That was anything that really I didn't expect. But as soon as I walked out on the court, I visualised turning around. You had to bow to the royal family in those days. All these sorts of things. I just felt like I'd been there before. And some of the situations came up, and in that situation, I was very calm and dealt with it, and it turned out to be one of my best performances of my career.
It sure was.
Under huge pressure.
And I think it relates a lot to back what Tim you were saying. And John referenced this morning, getting on and preparing for the morning commute, there is a mental journey. And whatever we do, in my case, board meetings, or coming home to my wonderful Colombian wife if I'm late or something, it's all those preparations to go through. And I think it doesn't matter whether you're in the Wimbledon final or the smallest things. I've got two more questions, and then I'd love to, a couple to go through, and I'd love to open the room up to that, if anyone's got a question for Pat as well. So you've touched on a little bit around temperance, Pat. So in becoming one of the greatest tennis players of certainly of my generation, and a hero to our nation, you started to reference it, the disciplines and the way you evolved, and you continually evolved both personally and professionally. What are the things you had to say no to? Because sometimes as a Stoic, we talk about the things we're trying to progress, but we're also trying to say no a lot, or whether you want to be retracting on certain things.
Yeah, see, that is one of the lessons I'm still learning. I sit up here certainly as a failed human, and with a lot of issues and things that I have to learn in my life. One of the things was to say no. I think, I mean, a lot of this is being, the way I was raised. So my father and I we were raised Catholics, and be very generous and always to give, and that is kind of one of my fallback things, is to always to give, and go out of my way to do things. And I've had to learn to say no to a lot of things, and I kind of learned it professionally through my career by saying no to. I was never a fan on media. Everything was a distraction for me from trying to be a better tennis player. Yeah, can you do this interview? No, I've got to practice, or I've got to rest, or I've got to do something. So those things that were sort of damaging. You had to say no to your nights out, to your mates. I didn't have a normal upbringing. I never had my 21st birthday. Though I had a great present, my son was born on that day, so I can't really better that. But you miss out. They're the, I suppose, sacrifices that you have to make. But I'm learning, to say no to things now, and it's very, very tough for me. So these are good lessons that I'm having to learn.
Yeah. I think we're all still going through that. And then finally, on courage, you've touched on a little bit of this, but to clarify it, how would you describe the moments of fortitude and courage that turned the corner for you? The milestones, you mentioned the teamwork. Is there any particular moments that you felt you had the courage to drive through? Recovery from injury is a big thing. But any other moments that you'd share with us before we have questions out to the real courage?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I've done in my life, and this is post tennis. You hear often about sportsmen who fall into big dark holes, people who've had bad things in their careers, and we hear about celebrities and whatever who've taken their life or have just damaged their life. It happens all the time, and it's just not. That's the public ones that we know about. I think one of the biggest courage was for me to accept that that I had some failings and in my career, which was even though I could switch off and do the family thing, it was basically a selfish career because it was all about me, getting the best out of myself. I think several years after when it all finished, wasn't though I did have the family, so I was controlled most of the time, but I think it's fair to say that I was like quite a lot of sportsmen and overdid the partying, and I had to. I think the greatest courage for me was to put my hand up and say, "Hey, I need some help here in this area."
Interesting.
I went into that. I dived into that like I did in my tennis career. Hey, I want to be better. Right, I'm gonna go and to a rehab place. Though I wasn't a atypical this or that, I wasn't an alcoholic, I wasn't a drug addict, I wasn't this, but I was very depressed and I had tendencies towards all of those sort of things. And then to walk in there and to have the courage to walk in there and sit in a circle and start doing the 12-step program, that's that sort of stuff that they do. And funny enough, on my phone here, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I mean, that's got to be Stoic. I don't know who exactly made that, but that's on my phone as a reminder. That was really my accepting life as a real person as opposed to this guy that ran around and played tennis. Yeah. So. But it took a lot of courage. It took a real lot of courage to go out there, to go and do that, and to sit around a room and do these really uncomfortable exercises with people and regression and all this sort of stuff. But again, probably one of the best things I've ever done. It's amazing. Every time I've gone, I hate this, or everything's going to shit. To just have the courage to keep going, that's one step at a time. It's been massive for me.